Welcome to Starbound. My name's Aram, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyrin and Remike. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. Mike Bronson took a long sip from his chipped coffee mug, the faded lettering proclaiming "Humans rule here," barely visible after years of use. The bitter liquid was hot enough to scald any of his alien clients, but to Mike, it was just this side of lukewarm. He set the mug down on his cluttered desk and pulled up the manifest for today's tour group. "Computer, give me the rundown on today's idiots," he said, leaning back in his chair, the ancient springs protesting loudly.
"Group of 5 arriving at 0900 station time,"
replied the AI in a gruff voice that Mike had specifically programmed to sound like his old drill sergeant.
"Lead client is Prince Clopian of the Mibari hegemony. Royal pain in the ass, according to previous tour guides. 4 others, merchant, academic, retired military, and some kind of celebrity daredevil."
Mike groaned and rubbed his stubbled jaw. Oh, perfect. A pampered prince and his circus. Just what I need for my last tour. His cramped office at Frontier Station was a testament to his 15 years as a tour guide, or Danger Experience Facilitator, as his company insisted on calling it. The walls were covered with military memorabilia, outdated weapons that were now more decorative than functional, and framed 1-star reviews from terrified alien tourists. Each negative review was a badge of honor. If they weren't scared, he wasn't doing his job right.
"Tour group shuttle docking in 15 minutes!"
the AI announced. Yeah. Mike stood and stretched, his tall frame nearly touching the low ceiling. At 44, his body carried the evidence of his previous career. Scars from his Special Forces days, a slight limp from a drop that went wrong on Titan, and reflexes that were still sharp enough to keep him alive in human space. He holstered his old pistol, more habit than necessity, and grabbed his tour guide kit, actually a modified Special Forces survival pack that he'd adapted for civilian use. As he headed toward the docking bay, he mentally shifted into his tour guide persona. Gruff, intimidating, the stereotypical dangerous human that aliens paid premium credits to experience from a supposedly safe distance. The concept still amused him. After humans had burst onto the interstellar scene, our reputation had quickly formed. Deathworlders, they called us. Unpredictable, aggressive, resilient to the point of seeming unkillable by alien standards. And so, inevitably, tourism followed. Wealthy aliens from the civilized parts of the galaxy paying to experience the thrill of human space, the area they dramatically nicknamed the end of the galaxy. And Mike had been cashing in on it for 15 years. This was his final tour, though. He'd saved enough to buy a small asteroid homestead in a quiet part of the belt. No more aliens, no more humans, just him and the silent void. Perfect retirement for a man who'd seen too much of both war and peace and found neither to his liking. The docking bay was a stark contrast to the corporate-run sections of the station. Here, in the human quarter, functionality trumped aesthetics. Exposed pipes, visible wiring conduits, and honest wear and tear that showed that humans built things to work, not look pretty. A massive sign over the main entrance declared, "Humans rule here," in bold red lettering, with a smaller text below reading, "All non-human entities enter at their own risk." The alien shuttle docked with the kind of fussy precision typical of their automated systems. Mike straightened his posture, set his face in a stern expression, and prepared to meet the group that would fund the last piece of his retirement. The airlock cycled, and 5 aliens of varying species stepped into human space, each reacting differently to the change in environment. Mike could read them instantly. The way the bulky one flinched at the slightly higher gravity, how the tall, thin one with expensive recording equipment kept looking around nervously, the pompous posture of the one in military-style clothing. But it was the one in the center who caught and held Mike's attention. Prince Clopian of the Mibari hegemony stood about 5 feet tall, his skin a pale flesh tone with subtle blue highlights around the joints. He was surrounded by at least a dozen floating devices that beeped and chirped, monitoring everything from air quality to gravitational fluctuations. "Welcome to Frontier Station," Mike announced, not bothering to make his voice particularly welcoming. "I'm Mike Bronson, your guide through what you all insist on calling the end of the galaxy. Before we begin, I need to make something clear. This isn't a theme park. Human space is genuinely dangerous, particularly to non-humans who haven't evolved on a death world." The bulky alien, whom Mike pegged as the merchant, puffed up importantly.
"I've taken 7 dangerous expeditions. This will hardly be my first exposure to risk."
Mike fixed him with a flat stare until the alien deflated slightly. "Your name?"
"Grell,"
the merchant said, attempting to maintain his bravado.
"I've faced dangers on—"
"Don't care." Mike cut him off and moved on. "The rest of you." The academic stepped forward with a slight bow.
"I am Pella, xenoanthropologist specializing in primitive adaptive cultures. I'm particularly interested in observing human problem-solving methodologies in crisis situations."
Mike barely suppressed an eye roll. Academics were the worst, constantly taking notes and asking inane questions about why humans did things the obviously superior way. The retired military officer stood at a passable approximation of attention.
"Commander Dorak, retired from the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. 20 cycles of service, maintaining order in the civilized sectors."
Mike nodded slightly. "Real combat experience?" Dorak hesitated.
"I oversaw 17 peacekeeping operations, so that's a no."
Mike moved on to the last alien. She was already recording him with multiple floating cameras.
"I'm Trill. I have over 30 million followers across the galaxy who watch my danger experiences. This is so exciting to finally see actual humans in their natural habitat."
The enthusiasm was almost worse than the condescension. Mike finally turned to the prince. "Your Highness," he said, with just enough deference to avoid a diplomatic incident. Prince Clopian looked Mike up and down, his expression a mixture of curiosity and disdain.
"This vessel is inadequately temperature-controlled,"
he said instead of a greeting. One of his devices beeped in apparent agreement. "If you find our accommodations uncomfortable now, you might want to reconsider this tour," Mike replied evenly. "It only gets worse from here."
"I was assured this experience would be challenging, yet safe,"
the prince said.
"I expect both conditions to be met."
Mike smiled thinly. "Safety is relative in human space. That's why those signs aren't decorative." He pointed to the "humans rule here" signs. "They're warnings. Out here we do things our way. You follow my instructions exactly. You don't touch anything without permission, and you always assume that everything can kill you. Because in human space, most things can." The speech was part of his standard routine, designed to set the proper tone of controlled fear. It worked as usual. Grell trying to hide his nervousness, Pella taking notes, Dorak attempting to look unimpressed, but failing, and Trill recording every word with delight. Only Prince Clopian seemed unaffected.
Yes, very dramatic. When does the actual experience begin? My comfort systems are already registering significant displeasure with the local environment.
Mike checked his watch. Right now. Follow me to the ship. Try to keep up. He led them through the station's human section, deliberately taking a route past the noisier, more intimidating areas. The machine shop with its sparks and clanging. The bar where off-duty miners were already drinking despite the early hour. The weapons testing range where the sound of gunfire made several of the aliens jump.
Is this really necessary?
Prince Clopian demanded as one of his devices began emitting a high-pitched whine. Shortest route, Mike lied smoothly. In truth, there was a much quieter path, but this way set the proper tone. They finally arrived at Docking Bay 17, where Mike's ship waited. The Lost Cause was a modified ex-military transport, roughly 80 feet long and built like a brick with engines. Its hull was patched in dozens of places, the original military gray paint now covered with mismatched panels and crude repairs.
This is our transport?
Pella asked, her recording device whirring as she documented the ship. Don't worry, Mike said, slapping the hull affectionately. A panel promptly fell off, clattering to the deck. Mike caught it with practiced ease and slapped it back into place. She's more reliable than she looks, usually. Prince Clopian's comfort devices were now beeping in a chorus of alarm.
This vessel cannot possibly meet basic safety standards.
Actually, Mike said, punching the access code to lower the boarding ramp. She exceeds military specs in the systems that matter. Life support, engines, and shields. The rest is cosmetic. This, at least, was true. Mike might cultivate a dangerous image, but he wasn't about to risk his life in an actually unsafe ship. They boarded, the aliens looking around the Spartan interior with varying degrees of horror. The inside of the Lost Cause was utilitarian to the extreme. Exposed conduits, visible system junctions, and seating that was functional rather than comfortable.
Why is everything exposed?
Grell asked, poking at a bundle of cables. So it can be fixed when it breaks, Mike answered. Human engineering philosophy. Make it accessible, make it fixable. Take your seats, we launch in 5. As the aliens strapped in, Mike made his way to the cockpit. It was a ritual now, this last tour. One final trip through the pseudo-dangers he'd been orchestrating for years. Collect his pay, and then freedom. The retirement asteroid was already purchased, the supplies arranged. This was just the final step. He fired up the engines, feeling the satisfying rumble through the deck plates. The Lost Cause might look like junk, but her General Atomics pulse drive was top of the line, courtesy of the bonus he'd received for safely returning a particularly important alien dignitary 3 years ago. Frontier Control, this is Tour Vessel Lost Cause requesting departure clearance, he said into the comm.
Clearance granted, Lost Cause. Try not to terrify this batch too badly. We're still getting complaints about the last group.
Mike grinned. No promises. Bronson, out. He guided the ship out of the docking bay with practiced ease, setting course for the abandoned mining facility that served as the first stop on his standard tour route. It was a safe location where he could stage a minor danger to get the adrenaline flowing, then gradually escalate as the tour continued. Once they were safely in transit, he set the autopilot and returned to the passenger compartment. The aliens had settled in, though Prince Clopian's devices continued to beep complaints about every aspect of the ship's environment. Journey time is 40 minutes to our first destination, Mike announced. An abandoned human mining facility where you'll get your first taste of the dangers human workers face daily. Any questions before we arrive? Pela raised a hand.
What precisely makes human space so dangerous compared to the civilized sectors?
It was a common question, one Mike had a well-rehearsed answer for. Lack of oversight, he said bluntly. The central authority's influence fades out here. People do what they want, take what they want, and settle disputes directly rather than through councils and committees.
How barbaric,
Dorak commented. Mike shrugged. Effective, though. Quick justice. No appeals process needed when the judgment is a bullet. The aliens exchanged uncomfortable looks. Exactly the reaction Mike was aiming for. That's why these tours are so popular, he continued. You all live in systems so regulated that true danger has been engineered out. Humans still embrace it. We thrive on it.
Fascinating perspective,
Pela murmured, recording his words.
A cultural adaptation to high-stress environments. Is there actual danger on this tour?
Trill asked eagerly, her recording devices hovering around her head.
My followers are expecting real thrills.
There's always danger in human space, Mike answered cryptically. In truth, the tours were carefully orchestrated to provide the illusion of risk while keeping actual danger to a minimum. The mining facility had been specially prepared with harmless but impressive malfunctions that would trigger during their visit. Prince Clopian, who had been adjusting his comfort devices, looked up with evident boredom.
I was promised a genuine human danger experience, not a museum tour with dramatic narration.
Mike met the prince's gaze steadily. Your Highness, even our museums have higher casualty rates than your combat zones. The prince scoffed, but didn't argue further. The journey passed with Mike answering the standard questions about human resilience, pain tolerance, and aggression. He'd given this spiel so many times that he could recite it in his sleep, throwing in the occasional deliberately intimidating detail about human biology or behavior that would make the aliens shift uncomfortably. As they approached the mining facility, Mike returned to the cockpit to handle the docking procedure. The facility loomed against the backdrop of a mineral-rich asteroid, its structures jutting out at odd angles, a testament to human pragmatic engineering built to follow mineral veins rather than aesthetic principles. Something caught Mike's eye as they approached. Faint lights in sections that should have been powered down, subtle signs of activity where there should be none. He frowned, doing a sensor sweep of the area. Nothing obvious, but his instincts were tingling. He considered changing the itinerary, selecting a different location for their first stop, but rejected the idea after a moment's thought. If there was unauthorized activity at the facility, it was his duty to report it. Might as well check it out while he was here. He docked the lost cause at the main airlock, deliberately rougher than necessary to give the aliens a jolt. Then he returned to the passenger compartment. We've arrived at our first destination, he announced. This facility was once the primary extraction point for rare minerals used in FTL drive manufacturing. It was abandoned 20 years ago when the primary veins were depleted. Now it serves as a perfect example of the harsh conditions human miners endured. We'll be taking a short walking tour through the main processing sections. The aliens unbuckled and gathered their various devices. Prince Clopian's comfort systems were now projecting a localized environmental bubble around him, visibly distorting the air. Is that really necessary? Mike asked, nodding toward the bubble.
My physiology requires precise environmental controls,
the prince replied haughtily. Mike shook his head. That thing's going to make noise and draw attention. This is a stealth tour. We observe the dangers without becoming part of them.
I was assured accommodations would be made for my status,
the prince insisted. Rather than argue further, Mike distributed basic environmental suits to the others. Standard procedure. The life support in abandoned sections can be unpredictable. As they prepared to disembark, Mike checked his sidearm discreetly. Normally it was just for show, part of the dangerous human image, but the signs of activity had him concerned. Better to be prepared for actual trouble, however unlikely. They cycled through the airlock and entered the facility. The main corridor was dark, emergency lighting casting long shadows. Mike switched on a powerful handheld light, deliberately aiming it to create menacing shadows. "Watch your step," he warned. "Follow me closely and touch nothing." The aliens clustered behind him as he led them deeper into the facility, providing a running commentary about the harsh conditions miners faced, the accidents that claimed lives, and the ever-present dangers of industrial equipment that prioritized efficiency over safety. Most of it was standard tour material, exaggerated for effect but based on truth. The aliens were eating it up, recording everything, with Grell jumping at every creak and groan of the structure while trying to pretend he wasn't terrified. Only Prince Clopian remained unimpressed, his environmental bubble humming softly as he glanced around with evident boredom.
Is there something actually interesting ahead? Perhaps those murderous mining drones mentioned in the brochure?
Mike was about to deliver his usual line about patience when he heard it. The unmistakable sound of voices echoing from a side corridor. Human voices, speaking in low, urgent tones. He immediately raised a hand for silence, his posture shifting subtly from tour guide to soldier. The aliens, sensing the change, fell quiet, except for Prince Clopian.
What now? Another fabricated danger, too.
Mike moved with unexpected speed, clamping a hand over the prince's mouth, his strength easily overriding the alien's resistance.
Quiet,
he hissed, his voice dropping to a barely audible whisper.
That's not part of the tour.
The prince's eyes widened as he finally registered the seriousness in Mike's demeanor. The comfort devices beeped in protest at the rough handling, and Mike silently cursed the noisy technology. Footsteps approached from the side corridor. Mike quickly ushered the group into a small storage room, closing the door until only a crack remained. Through it, he watched as 3 figures passed by. 2 humans and an alien of a species he didn't immediately recognize, all armed with military-grade weapons. Raiders. This abandoned facility had become a hideout for one of the criminal groups that plagued the borders of human space. Once the patrol had passed, Mike turned to the group.
"Change of plans," he whispered. "This facility has been occupied by raiders. Real ones, not the fake danger you signed up for." "Is this part of the experience?"
Trill asked eagerly, her recording devices still hovering.
"No,"
Mike said firmly, grabbing one of the devices and shutting it off.
"This is actual danger. Those are actual raiders with actual weapons who will actually kill us if they find us. We need to get back to the ship without being detected."
The gravity of the situation finally seemed to register. Grell's complexion paled to an unhealthy gray, while Dorak straightened his posture in what Mike recognized as fear, masked as military bearing.
"What is the standard human protocol in such situations?"
Pella asked, still somehow maintaining her academic detachment even as her hands trembled slightly.
"Get out alive," Mike said simply. "Follow me, stay silent, and do exactly as I say."
He cracked the door, checked that the corridor was clear, then led them back the way they had come. They had nearly reached the junction leading to the airlock when Mike heard more voices and footsteps, lots of them coming from that direction.
"Back," he whispered urgently, directing them down a side passage. "They're setting up in our exit path."
As they retreated deeper into the facility, Mike's mind raced through options. The lost cause was now evidently blocked from them, which meant they needed an alternative exit strategy. The facility had secondary airlocks for emergency evacuation, but reaching one would mean crossing through areas where the raiders were likely operating. They reached a maintenance control room, and Mike ushered everyone inside, securing the door behind them. The room was dusty but intact, with banks of monitors showing various sections of the facility. Most were dark, but several showed activity. At least 8 raiders setting up equipment in what had once been the main processing center.
Oh, what are they doing?
Grell whispered, his voice trembling. Mike studied the monitors.
Setting up for something big. Those are communication jammers and sensor arrays, military grade.
He turned to the group, his expression deadly serious.
This isn't a simple hideout. They're preparing for an operation.
Prince Clopian's comfort devices were now beeping frantically, the environmental bubble fluctuating as it struggled to maintain settings. The noise was becoming dangerously loud in the quiet room.
Turn those off,
Mike ordered, pointing at the devices.
I cannot,
the prince protested.
They regulate my...
They'll get us all killed.
Mike cut him off, reaching for the central control unit of the system. The prince tried to stop him, but Mike easily brushed aside his resistance, finding and hitting the emergency shutdown. The devices powered down, the bubble dissipated, and blessed silence fell. The prince gasped as unfiltered station air hit his senses.
How dare you! These systems are calibrated to my exact physiological requirements.
Your Highness, Mike said coldly.
Out here, those fancy toys are just shiny "please kill me" signs. You'll survive without them. Humans live in these conditions all the time.
I am not human,
the prince sputtered indignantly.
Today you are,
Mike replied.
Or you're dead. Your choice.
While the prince struggled to adjust to unfiltered sensory input, Mike assessed their situation through the monitors. The raiders had established a perimeter that effectively cut them off from both the main airlock, where the lost cause was docked, and the most accessible secondary airlocks.
There's an emergency evacuation point in the old foreman's office,
he said, pointing to a schematic on the wall.
2 levels down. If we can reach it, we can send a distress signal to the Human Defense Fleet patrol that monitors this sector.
Why not just hide until they leave?
Grell suggested hopefully. Mike shook his head.
They're setting up for a major operation. Could be days, and we don't have supplies.
He didn't mention that the raiders would almost certainly do a thorough sweep of the facility once their ship was found.
I suggest a tactical withdrawal through the ventilation system,
Dorak offered, pointing to the ducts visible on the schematic.
Standard infiltration route.
Mike gave him a withering look.
These are industrial ventilation shafts designed to move superheated air from the processing centers. They're maintenance access only, not infiltration routes. We'd be cooked alive if any systems are still active.
Dorak deflated slightly, and Mike turned back to the monitors, formulating a plan.
They'll need to move through secondary corridors, avoiding the main passages where they've set up. It means a longer route, but less chance of encounter.
He checked his sidearm. A simple M1911 passed down from his great-great-grandfather all the way to him. Effective, but limited ammunition. Against a group of well-armed raiders, it would only buy them a few moments at best.
Let's move,
he said, checking the corridor through the door's small window.
Stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to do something, do it immediately, without question.
They slipped into the corridor, Mike leading with his light dimmed to the minimum necessary illumination. The aliens followed in a tight cluster. Even Prince Clopian, who was breathing in short, panicked gasps as his unfiltered senses struggled to process the environment. Their progress was slow and tense, each junction requiring careful reconnaissance before proceeding. Twice they had to hide inside rooms as raider patrols passed. During one such hiding period, in what appeared to be an old decontamination chamber,
Dorak accidentally leaned against a control panel. With a mechanical groan, the overhead sprayers activated, dousing the entire group with a foul-smelling disinfectant chemical.
The aliens gasped and sputtered,
with Prince Clopian looking particularly horrified as the liquid soaked through his expensive clothing.
Turn it off!
Grell hissed, frantically trying to avoid the spray. Mike calmly reached over and deactivated the system, then smiled unexpectedly.
"Actually, this is helpful."
Helpful?
The prince sputtered, wiping the foul liquid from his face.
This is disgusting.
"It's a chemical decontaminant," Mike explained. "It will mask our scent and heat signatures somewhat from their detection equipment. Sometimes getting dirty is the cleanest solution."
The aliens stared at him in confusion, but Mike was already moving to the door, checking that the corridor was clear before waving them forward. They continued their careful progress through the facility, descending to the lower level through a maintenance stairwell. The second level showed more signs of the raiders' presence: equipment cases stacked against walls, portable lighting units set up at intervals, and fresh scuff marks on the dusty floors. They reached a junction where they would need to cross an open area to reach the corridor leading to the foreman's office. Mike surveyed the space cautiously. 2 raiders were visible, setting up what appeared to be sensor equipment at the far end.
"We need a distraction,"
Mike whispered, glancing around. His eyes fell on an old mining cart on tracks that led into the open area. With a thoughtful expression, he examined the cart's mechanism and the control panel nearby.
What are you planning?
Pella asked.
"Creating chaos,"
Mike replied, beginning to work on the control panel with tools from his pack. As he worked, Prince Clopian suddenly sagged against the wall, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. The alien was experiencing a full-blown panic attack without his comfort systems to regulate his responses. Mike paused his work and moved to the prince's side. Rather than the rough handling he'd shown earlier, he displayed surprising gentleness, guiding the prince to sit and placing a steadying hand on his shoulder.
"Slow breaths,"
he instructed quietly.
"In through the nose, out through the mouth. Focus on my voice. You're experiencing sensory overload without your filters. It's normal.
Your brain is getting raw data for the first time, maybe ever.
It'll pass."
The prince struggled to follow the instructions, his eyes wide with panic.
"Listen to me,"
Mike continued, his voice calm and steady.
"Humans deal with this level of sensory input constantly. Your brain can handle it too. It's just practice. Focus on one sense at a time. What do you hear right now? Just the sounds."
Gradually, the prince's breathing slowed as he followed Mike's guidance. The other aliens watched in surprise at this display of compassion from the supposedly hardened human.
"Better?"
Mike asked after a few minutes. The prince nodded weakly.
How do you live like this all the time?
Mike's mouth quirked in a half smile.
"We're built for it, and you're tougher than you think. Ready to move?"
Another nod, and Mike returned to the control panel, finishing his work quickly.
"When I activate this, the cart will move into the open area and then overload," he explained to the group. "It'll create noise, light, and confusion. We use that to cross to the corridor on the far side. Stay low, move fast, and don't stop until you reach the next junction. Clear?"
The aliens nodded their understanding, tension visible in their postures. Mike flipped the final switch on the panel and immediately moved to the edge of the junction. The mining cart rumbled to life, rolling forward on its ancient tracks with a screech of metal. As it entered the open area, the raiders looked up in surprise. Just as the cart reached the center of the space, sparks began to fly from its power coupling. Seconds later, it exploded in a shower of parts and electrical discharge, not particularly dangerous, but impressively loud and bright. "Now!" Mike commanded, darting into the open space with the aliens close behind. They were halfway across when one of the raiders recovered from the surprise faster than expected.
Intruders!
He shouted, raising his weapon. Mike reacted instantly, shoving the nearest aliens forward while drawing his pistol in one smooth motion. 2 shots rang out, the first hitting the raider's weapon and sending it spinning from his grasp, the second impacting near the second raider's feet, forcing him to dive for cover. The momentary advantage was enough. They reached the far corridor, but as they did, a third raider appeared from a side passage. Mike had no clean shot with the aliens in the way, so he did the next best thing. He charged, slamming into the raider with his full weight and momentum. The impact sent them both crashing into the wall. The raider recovered quickly, drawing a wicked-looking combat knife. Mike dodged the first thrust, trapped the raider's arm on the second, and delivered a crushing elbow strike to the man's temple. The raider slumped, unconscious, but the altercation had cost precious seconds. More shouts echoed from behind as the other raiders called for backup.
Move!
Mike ordered, scooping up the fallen raider's knife and a compact energy pistol. He handed the energy weapon to Dorak. Point and shoot. Try not to hit us. The alien officer took the weapon with a mixture of distaste and uncertainty, but said nothing as they ran down the corridor. They reached the foreman's office without further incident, barricading the door behind them with furniture. The office was dusty but intact, with an emergency communication console built into the wall, standard in all human mining operations after the Ceres disaster. Mike inspected the console, relieved to find its independent power cell still held a charge. As he worked to activate it, Pella examined the office's data terminals.
These appear to still be functional,
She said with surprise.
and there are recently accessed files.
Mike glanced up sharply. What kind of files? Pella's fingers moved over the interface.
Shipping manifests, patrol schedules, defense specifications for this entire sector.
Let me see, Mike said, moving to her side. The files confirmed his worst fears. These weren't ordinary raiders. They were planning something much bigger. And as he scrolled through the data, a name caught his eye that made his blood run cold. Drace Blackwell.
Trouble?
Trill asked, noting his expression. The worst kind, Mike muttered. I know who's running this operation, and if it's who I think it is, we're in serious danger. Before he could elaborate, the communication console beeped. He returned to it, working quickly to establish connection to the human defense fleet frequency. Almost there, he said, adjusting the settings. Once we send the distress signal, we need to find a defensible position. Help won't arrive immediately, and those raiders will know exactly where the signal came from.
Who is leading these raiders?
Prince Clopian asked, seeming to have found a new reserve of composure despite his earlier panic. Mike hesitated, then decided they deserved to know the full situation. If I'm right, it's Drace Blackwell, former Special Forces like me. We served together. He went rogue 8 years ago, started selling his skills to the highest bidder. He's wanted in 17 systems.
And he was your colleague?
Pela asked, recording the information. Teammate, Mike corrected grimly. We operated together for 5 years. I know how he thinks, how he plans. These files, he gestured to the terminal, suggest he's planning to hit a major shipment passing through this sector. But that's not all. He's gathering intelligence on human border defenses. Someone's paying him to find weaknesses. The implications hung heavy in the air. A breach in human border security wouldn't just threaten human interests, it would destabilize the entire sector, including the aliens' home systems. This goes beyond a simple tour gone wrong, Mike continued. If Drace succeeds, the consequences will reach all the way to the hegemony. He looked directly at Prince Clopian. Including your homeworld, Your Highness. The prince met his gaze with newfound seriousness. What do you propose? First, we send this distress signal. Mike said, turning back to the console. Then we find a defensive position and hold it until help arrives. Response time should be under 2 hours.
2 hours? Grell squeaked. We have to evade professional killers for 2 hours.
Not evade, Mike corrected, finalizing the distress signal. Stand and fight. We can't let Drace complete his operation or escape with that intelligence. As he sent the signal, the console emitted a sharp tone confirming transmission. Almost immediately, an alarm began to sound throughout the facility.
They've detected the transmission,
Mike said, drawing his pistol. Get ready. They'll be coming for us. He quickly assessed their resources. His sidearm with limited ammunition, the energy pistol he'd given to Dorak, the combat knife, and 5 aliens with varying degrees of usefulness in a combat situation.
Barricade the door more thoroughly,
he ordered. Use everything that isn't bolted down. As the aliens scrambled to comply, Mike searched the office for anything else useful. In a locker, he found an old emergency kit containing a medical pack, light sticks, and, most valuably, a mining charge. Not a weapon per se, but in the hands of someone who knew how to use it, nearly anything could become a weapon. They had just finished reinforcing the barricade when footsteps approached from the corridor. Mike positioned himself behind a fallen cabinet, weapon ready, and motioned for the aliens to take cover.
Whoever's in there!
A voice called from outside.
You've got nowhere to go! Open up and we'll make it quick!
Mike remained silent, signaling the others to do the same.
Fine!
The voice continued after a pause.
We'll do it the hard way!
A shot from an energy weapon hit the door, scorching but not penetrating the metal. Human mining facilities were built to contain explosions and industrial accidents. The door would hold for a while.
That won't work!
A second voice said.
Get the breaching charges!
Mike used the respite to position the aliens around the room, placing them behind the sturdiest cover available.
When they breach, he instructed, stay down. Let me handle it. Your weapon has limited ammunition,
Dorak pointed out.
There are at least 8 raiders. Which is why we need to be smarter, not just shoot everything that moves.
Mike replied. He handed the mining charge to Pella. Can you set this to remote detonation? The academic examined the device.
I believe so.
Outside, the raiders could be heard preparing their breach. Mike used the time to create a simple but effective trap, using furniture, the remaining light sticks, and some wire from his pack.
What is that supposed to accomplish?
Prince Clopian asked as Mike finished his preparations.
Confusion, Mike replied. In combat, the first few seconds determine everything. We need to disrupt their breach long enough to take advantage.
The prince nodded slowly, a new respect visible in his expression.
A primitive but logical approach.
Primitive works,
Mike said with a grim smile.
That's what humans do best. We make do.
A heavy thud against the door indicated the raiders had placed their breaching charge. Mike gave final instructions. When it blows, cover your ears and close your eyes. Don't move until I say so. Seconds later, the breaching charge detonated with a deafening roar. The reinforced door held, but barely, its center bulging inward with a screech of protesting metal. A second explosion followed immediately, and this time the door gave way, crashing into the room in a cloud of smoke and debris. Mike triggered his trap as the first raiders stormed through the breach. The light sticks ignited in a blinding flash, while the wire tripped the lead raider, sending him sprawling into his companions. In the confusion, Mike struck, firing 3 precise shots that dropped 2 raiders and forced the others to retreat temporarily.
Now!
He shouted to Pela, who activated the mining charge they'd placed near the doorway.
The resulting explosion wasn't large, but was enough to collapse part of the ceiling, creating a partial barrier of debris that further narrowed the breach point. The raiders regrouped quickly, firing blindly through the smoke and debris. Mike stayed low, conserving ammunition, waiting for clear targets.
"Give me the energy pistol,"
he said to Dorak, who handed it over without argument. With a weapon that didn't require conservation of ammunition, Mike was able to maintain suppressing fire, keeping the raiders at bay.
"We need to move,"
he said during a lull in the shooting. "They'll flank us soon through the ventilation system."
"Where can we go?"
Grell asked, his voice tight with fear.
"We're trapped."
Mike pointed to an emergency hatch in the floor, standard in mining facilities to provide escape routes in case of cave-ins.
"Maintenance tunnels. They run throughout the facility. We can use them to reach a defensive position closer to where help will arrive."
As they approached to open the hatch, a new voice called from beyond the breached door. A voice Mike recognized immediately. "Oh, Mikey! Still favor the double tap to center mass, I see." Mike froze momentarily, then replied.
"Drace, thought you'd be smart enough to stay off human territory after Titan."
A harsh laugh answered him. "Business is business, old friend, and this is just a waypoint. I'm surprised to see you playing tour guide to aliens. Bit of a step down, isn't it?"
"Pays better, and the retirement plan doesn't involve a body bag,"
Mike called back, using the conversation to cover the sound of Trill and Grell opening the hatch. "Speaking of retirement plans, Drace continued, I could use a man with your skills. My clients pay extremely well. Walk out with those aliens, and I'll cut you in. 20%.
"Tempting,"
Mike replied, catching Prince Clopian's alarmed expression from the corner of his eye. He gave the prince a reassuring nod.
"What exactly is the job?"
"Insurance," Drace said. "My clients want contingency access to human space. I'm providing route planning. The shipment rate is just a bonus."
"And these clients are?"
"Doesn't matter. Credits are credits." Mike gestured for the aliens to start descending through the hatch while keeping Drace talking.
"It might matter if they're planning to hit Mibari shipping routes. One of these tourists is royalty."
A pause, then, "You're touring with Prince Clopian? Even better! His family would pay handsomely for his safe return. Change of plans. Bring him out, and I'll make it 40%. Plus, amnesty for the others." Prince Clopian, who had been about to enter the breach, looked at Mike with genuine fear. Mike shook his head slightly and motioned for the prince to continue into the tunnel.
"I need time to convince them,"
Mike called to Drace.
"They're pretty shaken up."
5 minutes, Mike. Then we do this the hard way." As soon as the prince had descended, Mike followed, pulling the hatch shut above him. The maintenance tunnel was low and narrow, forcing them to move in a crouch. Emergency lighting provided minimal illumination.
"He offered to spare us,"
Dorak said accusingly.
"You didn't even consider it."
Mike turned a cold stare on the alien officer. He was lying. Standard negotiation tactic. Once he had the prince, we'd all be liabilities.
"How can you be sure?"
Grell asked nervously. "Because I know him," Mike replied, leading them down the tunnel. "And because I know how these operations work. No witnesses." They moved as quickly as the confined space allowed, following Mike's directions based on his knowledge of standard mining facility layouts. After several minutes, they reached a junction where the tunnel widened enough to stand.
"We need a new plan,"
Mike said, checking his weapons. "The distress signal is sent, but we still have over an hour before help arrives. Drace will have his men searching every inch of this facility."
"What do you suggest?"
Prince Clopian asked, surprising everyone with his calm demeanor. The prince seemed to have found some inner reserve of strength during their ordeal. Mike considered their options.
We need to disrupt his operation, delay whatever he's planning until help arrives.
That seems needlessly risky, Dorak objected. Surely hiding is the safer option.
There is no safe option, Mike said bluntly. Drace knows how to hunt. Our best defense is a good offense. Keep him reacting to us instead of the other way around.
What can we possibly do against professional raiders?
Grell asked. Mike smiled grimly. Create chaos. It's what we do best, after all. He turned to Pela. Those files you found, did they include the facility's layout? The academic nodded.
Complete schematics, including system controls and power distribution.
Perfect. If we can reach the main control room, we can use the facility's systems against them. Mining facilities have robust emergency protocols. Fire suppression, atmosphere control, power management. We turn those systems against Drace's team.
Is that not sabotage?
Dorak asked with disapproval. It's survival, Mike corrected. And it's the best chance we have of preventing Drace from completing his mission or escaping with that intelligence. He laid out a route to the control room, using the maintenance tunnels as much as possible. The plan was risky, but standing still was riskier. As they prepared to move out, Prince Clopian surprised everyone by taking charge of organizing their formation.
Commander Dorak should take the rear position with the knife, he said decisively. His military training, limited as it may be, makes him suitable for guard duty. Grell's bulk can shield Trill and Pela in the center. I will assist Mr. Bronson at the front.
The others looked to Mike, who nodded approval. Good thinking, Your Highness. Let's move. They proceeded through the tunnels, emerging occasionally into regular corridors when necessary. During one such transition, they encountered 2 raiders. Mike took down one with his remaining ammunition, while Prince Clopian, in a surprising display of adaptability, used a piece of broken piping to disable the second. Mike looked at the prince with newfound respect. Not bad for royalty. The prince straightened his soiled clothing with as much dignity as he could muster.
The Mibari royal house has a long tradition of military training. It is simply not commonly needed.
They appropriated the raiders' weapons and continued their journey. As they neared the control room, Mike's experience told him it would be guarded. A frontal approach would be suicide. We need a diversion, he said, studying the junction ahead. Unexpectedly, Trill stepped forward.
I can provide one.
Mike raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? The alien daredevil grinned.
My specialty is creating spectacles for my followers. Allow me to demonstrate.
Using equipment from her recording devices, she quickly assembled what appeared to be a small drone.
It projects sound and light patterns,
she explained.
Very convincing ones.
Mike was impressed, despite himself. That'll work. Send it down the far corridor, away from our approach. Trill programmed the drone, and they watched as it zipped away, soon projecting what appeared to be a group of intruders moving through the facility. The guards at the control room immediately responded, leaving their posts to investigate. Now, Mike whispered, leading the group to the control room door. It was locked with a standard security panel. He turned to Pela. Can you bypass it? The academic studied the panel.
I believe so. It's not a very complicated encryption.
She worked on the panel for several tense moments before the door slid open. Inside, the control room was a massive space filled with monitoring stations and system controls. One raider remained, turning in surprise as they entered. Before he could react, Mike silently neutralized him with a precise strike. Secure the door, he ordered as he moved to the main control console. Pela, I need those system accesses. The academic joined him, her knowledge proving unexpectedly practical as she navigated the facility's control systems. Together, they gained access to emergency protocols, life support, and power distribution.
What's your plan?
Prince Clopian asked, looking over their shoulders. Mike grinned. We're going to turn this facility into a funhouse of horrors. Localized atmospheric changes, emergency lockdowns, power fluctuations, everything to disrupt their operation and keep them off balance until help arrives. As they worked, Trill monitored the facility's cameras, providing updates on the raiders' positions. Drace had organized search parties, methodically checking each section of the facility.
They're approaching the lower storage areas.
Trill reported.
Heading away from us for now.
Mike nodded and triggered the first of their traps, an emergency lockdown in the section the raiders were entering, followed by a rapid atmosphere decompression and recompression cycle. Not lethal, but extremely disorienting and uncomfortable. On the monitors, they watched as the raiders were caught in the trap, some collapsing from the sudden pressure changes, others desperately trying to override the emergency systems. That won't hold them long, Mike said. Drace knows how to bypass standard protocols. We need to keep moving, stay unpredictable. For the next 40 minutes, they waged an electronic guerrilla war against the raiders, using the facility's systems to create chaos and confusion. They triggered fire suppression systems, altered gravity in specific sections, and used the public address system to broadcast false information. Drace quickly realized what they were doing and began cutting power to systems they had accessed, starting with the cameras, but Mike anticipated this, having Pela establish redundant controls from different terminals. He's adapting, Mike observed as Drace's team began to work around their obstacles. Time for something more direct. He located the facility's primary power distribution center on the schematics. If we overload the main reactor, it will trigger an emergency shutdown of all systems. They'll be operating blind for at least 15 minutes while backup systems initialize. Isn't that dangerous? Grell asked anxiously. It's a controlled overload, Mike assured him. These facilities are designed with multiple failsafes. The reactor will shut down before any real damage occurs. As they prepared the overload sequence, the control room door suddenly exploded inward. Drace had found them. Mike reacted instantly, pushing the aliens behind the central console for cover as he returned fire. Drace's team was well trained, taking positions at the entrance and establishing a crossfire that pinned them down.
Keep working on that overload!
Mike shouted to Pela as he exchanged fire with the raiders. Dorak, using one of the appropriated weapons, managed to provide some covering fire, though his aim was atrocious. Prince Clopian, demonstrating unexpected courage, darted between terminals to complete the necessary commands while Mike and Dorak kept the raiders occupied.
Overload sequence initiated,
the prince called triumphantly.
System shutdown in 30 seconds.
Drace must have heard, because his next move was unexpected and bold. Instead of continuing the firefight, he threw a smoke grenade into the control room, filling the space with dense white vapor. Through the smoke came Drace himself, moving with the speed and precision Mike remembered from their Special Forces days. What followed was a brutal close-quarters battle as Mike engaged his former teammate hand to hand. Drace was good, very good, but Mike had spent the last few hours adapting to protect others rather than just himself, and that experience gave him an edge in unpredictability. The facility's lights flickered and died just as the system began its emergency shutdown. In the darkness, illuminated only by emergency lighting and weapons fire, Mike and Drace continued their deadly dance.
You could have joined me,
Drace grunted as they grappled.
Instead, you're dying for aliens.
Not aliens, Mike corrected, blocking a strike and countering with one of his own.
Principles, something you forgot about.
The fight was vicious, neither man giving quarter. Both had the same training, knew the same techniques, but Mike had something Drace lacked, a reason beyond credits to win. In a desperate move, Mike allowed Drace to land a hit, using the momentum to get inside his guard and deliver a decisive strike to the throat. Drace staggered, gasping for air, and Mike finished the fight with a precise blow that left his former teammate unconscious. As the emergency lighting stabilized,
Mike surveyed the scene. The other raiders had been driven back by the combined efforts of Dorak and, surprisingly, Grell, who had found unexpected courage in the crisis.
We did it.
Prince Clopian said in awe, looking at the fallen Drace.
We actually defeated them.
Temporarily, Mike cautioned, checking Drace for weapons and securing his hands. We still need to get out of here. A sudden tremor shook the facility, dust falling from the ceiling.
What was that?
Trill asked, still recording everything despite the danger. Mike checked the monitoring systems that were still functioning on backup power. Defense fleet has arrived. They're docking now. Relief washed over the group. They had survived against professional raiders, protected vital intelligence about human defenses, and prevented what could have been a major security breach. As they made their way to meet the arriving Defense Fleet personnel, the aliens demonstrated a new cohesion, functioning as a unit under Prince Clopian's unexpected leadership. The prince himself moved with newfound confidence, no longer constantly reaching for his missing comfort devices. Human Defense Fleet Marines secured the facility with practiced efficiency, apprehending the surviving raiders and collecting the intelligence Drace had gathered. A medical officer treated Mike's injuries from the fight. "You're lucky to be alive," the officer commented as he sealed a wound on Mike's arm. "Drace Blackwell has killed everyone who's gone up against him until now." "I had help," Mike replied, glancing at the aliens who were giving their statements to fleet personnel. "Good help." As they prepared to return to Frontier Station, Prince Clopian approached Mike privately.
Mr. Bronson,
he said formally,
I wish to express my gratitude for your actions today. You saved not only my life, but potentially many others by preventing this intelligence breach.
Mike shrugged. "Just doing my job."
No,
the prince said firmly.
Your job was to provide a controlled illusion of danger. Instead, you faced real danger and made difficult choices that put your life at risk for others you barely know. That goes beyond duty.
Mike didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply nodded acknowledgement.
I've been thinking,
the prince continued.
The term, the end of the galaxy, that we use for human space is misleading. It suggests a boundary, a limit. But what I witnessed today wasn't limitation. It was a different way of existing. Adaptable, practical, resilient.
Just how humans are built, Mike said.
Perhaps,
the prince agreed.
But there is value in those traits that the rest of the galaxy could benefit from. I intend to propose a new initiative when I return, a program to teach practical human survival and adaptability skills to other species.
Mike raised an eyebrow. A school for teaching aliens to think like humans?
In a manner of speaking, yes,
Prince Clopian said.
And I would like you to consider leading it.
Mike stared at him in surprise. Me? I'm retiring. Bought an asteroid homestead already.
So you mentioned,
the prince said with a slight smile.
But is isolation truly what you want? Today I saw you at your best when you were protecting others, teaching us to survive. You have a gift for it.
The idea was unexpected, but not entirely unwelcome. Mike had always assumed his retirement would bring satisfaction, but the truth was, the prospect of complete isolation forever had been less appealing than he cared to admit. I'll think about it, he said noncommittally. Back at Frontier Station, Mike was hailed as a hero for his role in capturing Drace Blackwell and preventing the intelligence breach. The aliens from his tour group were treated with newfound respect by the station personnel. no longer just tourists, but survivors who had faced real human-style danger and emerged stronger. 2 days later, as the diplomatic proceedings concluded and arrangements were being made for the aliens' return to their respective worlds, Mike found himself in a new office on the station. It was larger than his old tour guide space, but still distinctively human in its practical, somewhat makeshift design. His old "Humans Rule Here" mug sat on the desk, but it was now accompanied by gifts from his former tour group. A data crystal from Pela containing her complete analysis of human problem-solving methods, a small recording drone from Trill programmed to capture authentic human moments, a ceremonial knife from Dorak as acknowledgement of Mike's superior tactical skills, and a rare mineral sample from Grell's private collection. The most significant gift came from Prince Clopian, an official commission as director of the newly formed Human Practical Skills Academy, with full funding and diplomatic status. The official seal bore a new motto: "Learning why humans rule here." As the first group of alien students entered his office, looking nervous and unsure what to expect, Mike grinned and stood to deliver his new welcome speech. "Welcome to human space," he said, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had found an unexpected new purpose. "First lesson: things will go wrong. Second lesson: that's when humans do our best work." On his desk, partially hidden under a stack of curriculum notes, was a star chart showing his abandoned retirement asteroid, now marked with a simple note: Plan B. For now, at least, Mike Bronson had found something more meaningful than isolation, showing the galaxy why humans rule here, not through fear or bravado, but through the grit, adaptability, and unexpected compassion that truly defined humanity at its best.